Hi, everyone, and welcome to Mile High Discussions. I am your host, Michael Lavoie. Today on Mile High Discussions, we will be discussing the topic of sports. With me today, I have 4 students from Denver Public Schools who are here to share their opinions and let us know what they think about the topic of sports. We'll have 3 questions for them. And now, let's get to know our 4 students, starting with David.
Cool. So my name is David. I'm a senior at East High School, and the sport that I play is golf.
I'm Elijah. I'm a junior at Thomas Jefferson High School, and I play football and I swim.
Hello, my name is Giselle Ortiz. I attend the Denver Center for International Studies, and my school is a magnet school, so we don't have any sports, only middle school sports, so our high school students get to go out and explore other sports at other schools, and I am a West varsity cheerleader.
And I'm Andrew Moore. I'm a big runner, and despite what many people might think, I am one to put bullhorns on the front of my car.
Every time I hear that, I think it's funnier each time. So as I mentioned before, we are going to be talking about 3 particular subjects revolving around the world of sports. Our first topic today actually pertains to collegiate sports. While the question applies to sports, we're going to focus mostly on NCAA basketball. During UConn's March Madness run in 2014, Shabazz Napier talked about how there were nights he couldn't afford food. The NCAA made close to $1 billion, which is 84% of what was on the March Madness alone. Studies have found that the average NCAA basketball player is worth $212,000. Players like Andrew Wiggins of Kansas and Julius Randle of Kentucky were both at a net worth of about $1 million. Do you guys think collegiate athletes should be paid? And I'll start with you, David.
So I don't believe that they should be paid, and I feel that's because it kind of relates back to middle school and high school sports. I mean, we just play just to play for the sport. I mean, education was our main priority attending that school, and when we went to those schools, we just decided to play for that sport, and it kind of relates back to college. I mean, they're playing for their college. They're not really having a career yet out of it. And I feel like with that in mind, that kind of gives them the experience that they should have.
Roger?
I feel that they shouldn't get paid because they're there mostly for education. Athletics just happen to be a part of it. And them getting paid isn't their main priority because when you're thinking about going to college, you're going to have a job. And so basically, you're doing it for this sport. You shouldn't be worried about that because you need to take care of that on your own, how you should have done if you wasn't doing athletics.
I agree with Elijah and David. I think that as a high school athlete, one of the greatest gifts you can receive from actually playing in a high school team is receiving the time management skills, along with just working and developing your skill with a team that is there to support you and help you superb and get to the highest level in that skill as possible. So I think that by receiving those skills and many others is more than enough. You don't need to get paid.
I feel like it's an extremely honorable thing to play a sport and be a top player for a college, a high school, a professional team, any of those. But also when it comes to necessities such as food, water, shelter, I think that top athletes need to be taken care of for sure, especially if you want them performing at their best and showing up to everything and being ready to play.
What if say they were to be given a stipend to take care of necessities, such as like Shabazz Napier wasn't able to buy food for certain days? What if that stipend given from the school was strictly for necessities and no luxuries?
I feel like, again, that goes to scholarships. If you're good enough to get a scholarship, they pay for all that. That means you're a necessity for the team. They need you. And if it comes to a point where any teammate, scholarship or not, is having struggle with food, yeah, they should definitely help out because they're there putting in effort and time for your sport to try to make you guys better. The least you could do is actually help them achieve what you want.
So you guys all agree that they shouldn't be compensated at all. Is there any particular reason? Like, scholarships are a good one, but what about walk-ons? Those players generally are not scholarship players. And in some instances, they have to bite into time where they could have a job to be a part of this team. What about in those situations?
if you're walking on, you're probably going to college academically, and sports just happen to be there where you want to do it. And if you were going to plan doing it academically, you probably were thinking about having a job. And if you walk on and that happens to be your second choice, you should always have the job that you needed in the first place. So you shouldn't depend on sports for money when you're there to mainly focus on academics.
And again, as a walk-on, I mean, I'm not a walk-on student, but as a walk-on student, somebody does need to consider that that's a choice that they made. And if you're good enough to play for a college team or the varsity college team, I think, at least I think, somewhere you had to have been offered a scholarship if you applied. And so, again, it just comes down to that was your choice. You decided not to apply for a scholarship or take the scholarship, and you ended up going there for academics and said, hey, I want to play sport. So I think that it really was up to the person, and they chose what they chose.
I would have to say that I would have to agree with Elijah and Andrew here. I mean, I feel like it kind of really goes to what they decide on. I mean, again, if they're walking on, they would have to focus on academics first. Now, afterwards, with whatever the free time that they have, let it be joining a club or playing a sport, that kind of plays into whatever they decide on. And, they could also, I mean, that kind of plays into they're focusing on their sport, whereas they could be having a job. And I feel like that kind of depends on each person's priorities.
I think that whether you were a walk-on or you were scouted by the team, they should fulfill your necessities if you were to need it as a student, for example, like basic necessities such as food. However, I think that nowadays college teams are going far and beyond in the amount of money that they pay these athletes, that they're failing to recognize a lot of the academic talent that their campus and school also has. They don't pay as much attention to the math genius or the science genius that are also there to excel their talents and abilities in those topics. So I just think that there just needs to be an equal playing field among all.
I want to go back to what we were talking about. Even if you are a walk-on, if you're good enough as a walk-on, you're also eligible for a scholarship the next season, and that's when they could actually help you out. So I feel as if you are a walk-on, you play, and you're not good enough for a scholarship the next year, you need to try to go to academics, because it's not going to work out.
Giselle, I'm actually going to pose this question to you. So you bring up a very interesting point about education being a big part, and they need to highlight that as well. What if I told you that a majority of the money that goes into the education systems are drawn in by these student athletes? Would that change your opinion at all?
I don't think it wouldn't, because I still see a lot of the college companies still paying thousands and thousands of dollars to these students, and I personally wouldn't want to consider myself the brand of a school. That is one of the reasons why I don't, it's not that I don't dislike, but I don't truly appreciate like a lot of the Ivy Leagues or the high-end university names, because I wanted to attend a school in a higher education institution where I knew I could go to that school and make it a good school because of the talent that I bring into that school.
Oh,
I'm going to go off for her. Last time I checked, I might be wrong. I thought there's more academic scholarships that went out than athletic scholarships.
Correct, but the athletics themselves generate funds for the school.
Oh, yeah.
Like college,
yeah.
like for instance at CU, a majority of their funding for science programs are actually from the football organization.
So they work hand in hand, basically.
Correct. I'm just essentially playing devil's advocate.
Okay.
I'm giving you guys a chance to kind of look at some other things, and a brilliant work from all four of you guys again. I'm surprised all four of you said no. I'm actually kind of different on that, and we'll talk about it during the break. So question 2. Throughout the years, there have been a lot of incredible athletes. Who, in your opinion, is the greatest athlete of all time? And I'm going to start with you, Elijah.
The greatest athlete of all time. Okay. I'm going to shy away from the well-known sports. I'm going to have to say Michael Phelps.
Oh, okay. And why is that?
I will say Michael Phelps because he basically made a sport bigger than what everyone think it was. As a swimmer myself, I look up to him. So Michael Phelps, he's a good-sized guy. Like, you would think, oh, maybe he plays basketball, but no, he's in the pool swimming. And a lot of people may look, oh, swimming's not a sport, but he's turning it into something. And there was actually a case with him before an Olympic meet. He got caught smoking marijuana, and he won gold medal. And they tried to take it away from him. I think that you doing pot, it actually slows you down. And him, in order to do that, just shows just his strength in swimming. So that's why I would say he's one of the greatest of all time.
David?
Well, I don't know about all time. I mean, we got a lot of great professional athletes out there in the world. I would say in the field of basketball, I would have to go with Michael Jordan. Why I would go with Michael Jordan is because he's probably one of the best players that I've ever seen in YouTube videos or, just in films prior to being here. And I feel like he, just the sense of intensity that he brings here, that to his game and really of how he's really focused, I feel like that kind of alone inspires people to excel in any sport that they play in.
Would you say that his brand, the Jordan brand, the Jumpman, would you say that that makes him even more iconic? And possibly that's why he becomes one of the greatest?
I don't know if it's a reason because he's one of the greatest. I would say it has made him a more iconic player because, it makes him more known. And definitely, a lot of people like the Jordan brand. But, I feel like just his mindset and his skill and his intensity alone makes him an iconic player.
Okay.
Elijah, I
think
go off what you're talking about, the shoes. Okay, so Michael Jordan. Okay, he's made more shoe money than he did playing basketball. So let's just go off of that fact. And second of all, I don't think his shoes should have anything to do with his career. My parents, in generally, they don't like me wearing Jordans because if in society today, they have young people killing each other over his shoes that he's pricing at $300, $400. He's just out of control with these shoes. I feel as if he know his basketball career wasn't as good as he wanted to, so he's trying to bring it over to shoes.
Okay. That's an interesting point considering he's won 6 NBA championships in 7 years.
That's
I'm just going to say that.
So do you think that the public and his fans should consider him an icon because of the shoes and the brand name that he brings, or because of the actual skill level that he brought to his team?
Definitely basketball. I'm trying to say that his shoes shouldn't have anything to do with his achievements in basketball.
Okay. All right, Giselle, you're up. Who's your greatest athlete of all time?
My greatest athlete of all time, coming from a family who has a great history in soccer, would have to be Pelé. My brother is a huge soccer fan. He loves him. He's a respected, well-known man in soccer, so I consider him a legend.
Okay. Do you have any specific moments that you remember? He's a little bit before your time, I'm sure.
Yeah. I don't think so. I just think the legend that he left for all soccer and the new legends that he's brought on, like the current one right now, I'd consider Messi, and for the new ones that he's to bring, he's one of the greatest influencers in that, so.
Definitely. I would completely agree with that. What about you, Andrew? I know you're a runner.
Yeah. Usain Bolt's definitely pretty big up there. However, I don't think I could pinpoint a top athlete for me. Overall, I think we were talking about icons, and I think athletes being iconic does have to do with their likability, and that just being because they're well known, and that creates an influence. So they get to other people get to learn about them, and they get to influence other people and encourage people, and yeah.
Are you saying that there's no single greatest athlete of all time or no iconic athlete of all time?
I don't think there's any single greatest athlete of all time. I think there are definitely more iconic athletes than other. Maybe not one most iconic, but there's definitely a scale there. And the reason I say there's no greatest athlete of all time is because all time still continues. So
that's a great answer. What do you guys define as iconic?
Iconic is I feel like in the record books, even when you're done with the sport, I want further generations to know who you were and why you were. So going down the line, I guess we can go back to Michael Jordan. Everyone's going to know he was a great basketball player. We're not going to throw clout on that he wasn't. later down generations, everyone's going to know, oh, Michael Jordan, yeah, he was great in basketball. He's an iconic figure, just like Kobe Bryant. Everyone's going to know who Kobe Bryant was because of his achievements too. So I feel iconic and greatest could definitely be two different things, because greatest, there's no greatest. They're all different sports. You could put, you can put Michael Jordan in the pool with any Olympic swimmer. He's not going to live up to what they've been doing. Or put a tennis player on the basketball court. There's no greatest.
That's very true. David, what do you define as iconic?
I would define them as kind of a way to inspire others. And I would say that because, I mean, everybody's always kind of like sports. And I feel that, that sports is, again, what Andrew said all the time. I mean, it's continuing, it's going to always be a favorable thing. And I feel like it's just a way to continue that sense of inspiring, to show why they're playing that sport, to show that their intensity and they're so focused on what they want to do and what they want to become kind of makes them iconic.
Nice. Giselle?
I think it's when you have the capability to rejuvenate the sport that you're passionate for in a certain way. For example, take Michael Phelps again. Nobody was really passionate or even watched or considered swimming a sport, but once Michael Phelps came in and showed the world what he had and what swimming could bring, I think he rejuvenated that sport. And now thousands of people watch it in the Olympics, and it's participated in worldwide.
And
I think an iconic figure is defined as someone who is definitely widely viewed, but also pretty well respected. And that being because they are an influence. And obviously, a well-known iconic player is not going to be well-known and iconic if they have a bad influence on someone. So respect plays a role in that for sure.
Definitely. Well, we could talk about this for the entire show, but unfortunately we have to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have your final question.
A lot of people think you have to be really good at numbers, and that's not really true. You do have to be good at solving problems. So we take students through all the basic fundamentals of accounting and hope to give them enough skills to go out and work in an entry-level accounting position.
Welcome back to Mile High Discussions. I'm your host, Michael LeBois. With me today I have David, Elijah, Giselle, and Andrew, and we're discussing the topic of sports. I have one final question for you four. Nowadays, there are a lot of athletes getting into trouble in their personal lives. Should pro athletes be held to a higher level of accountability for their actions off the field? And since they are very influential, should they be punished in some way? I'm going to start with you, Giselle.
Okay, I have a recent story to tell. So this past February, I'm a big New England Patriots fan. Even though I was born here in Colorado, I should be going for the Denver Broncos. But the New England team called my name, and I have a Tom Brady jersey. And as soon as they won the Super Bowl, I wear my jersey to school, of course, and to work that day. And all I received that day, unfortunately, was hate. And that was the reason because Tom Brady has a certain political affiliation that a lot of people did not appreciate at the time and still don't appreciate. And they were affiliating me with that political affiliation, and they didn't know they just automatically placed me as like, oh, you like Tom Brady, you follow this, you're into that, and I didn't appreciate that from people. And I like Tom Brady because of his skill and what he can go out and do on the field and all his plays, not because of what he thinks or what his family does or anything around that. So I just think that, again, like I said, an athlete should not be thought of, or just there shouldn't be an affiliation whether like you're good at the game or your personal beliefs.
Okay. David.
I would have to say that they should be accountable to what they do. Sorry. I say that because, each and every person is being watched. Even non-professional athletes. I mean, we're being watched currently, and we're also being watched, at our jobs. We're always watching our performance, on our behaviors and our actions, and on our comments. And I feel like that always relates back to on how other people see us and how we see us. And I feel like especially if you're a professional athlete, it heightens that sense. And I feel like that's because a lot of athletes tend to go to the professional route and they get turned down. So even just being a professional athlete alone is kind of like a special thing to do and a special thing to have. And I feel like that all eyes are on them, literally, and that they should really focus on what they do and try to, really not hurt themselves and not hurt their franchise.
But do you think because they're being watched, they shouldn't project what they believe in all the time because they know that it's going to influence their fans' behavior, actions, or thoughts?
Giselle's coming hard at me. I would have to say that no. It should be focused on the bad things. Now we're talking about abusement of drugs and alcohol, and I thought there was an animal abuse. So I feel like that kind of really pays attention to that. Now if we're talking about religion on personal aspects, political and social and soft skills, that's kind of all separate from it. We each have our own body, have our own mind, and I feel like we each have our own rights to each and everybody's opinions. But in that sense, that you have a career and you have a lot of kids, a lot of youth, and a lot of adults watching you, you kind of have an influence on what they do.
Elijah?
I would like to go off of him, talking about how they have an influence on you. Going back to the recent NFL seasons, when Colin Kaepernick, he took the knee because he wasn't necessarily proud of what was going around in America. I know that influenced our team because we didn't take a knee. We held hands during the national anthem to show that we were all united. And I feel it can affect you in bad ways, but we could focus more on the good ways. And it also depends on the type of sport. I feel like if it's more of a group sport, like say basketball and football, one person does something, it has a big effect on like everyone, like the franchise, the players. Kind of makes them look like, okay, we hired him and he's doing this with us, so it's okay. But if you go to like other sports like tennis, swimming, golf, you mess up there, and it's basically saying it's just their personal opinions. They can't affect anyone else. It's just them and them alone.
I think it's definitely important to give athletes, their personal freedoms as anybody else should deserve. But I think it's important, especially if you play for a team, to represent your brand. And I kind of did want to pose a question towards you guys. What if it's something that's not necessarily extreme, but has a negative connotation that these athletes act out upon?
Well, at first, Colin Kaepernick's action of taking the knee was seen nationwide as a negative thing, and it was hurting the country. However, he was able to create a national movement across the nation with all the football teams, basketball teams of taking the knee, and I think it starts with hate when you want to create a movement and develop and state your message. So
I feel it wasn't necessarily of their opinion. I think it was more on they didn't know why he was doing it. He didn't explain. They kind of guessed, and later down the road, you have to, if you're doing something like that, you got to have a final plan. Like, I'm doing this so so and so can happen, so I can fix this. So it just depends on the reason why you're doing it and how it's going to get solved.
All right. Let me get your final thoughts here, David. Anything you want to talk about. Doesn't have to be about sports. It's anything you want.
Well, I'll go back to sports. I don't have another topic on my mind currently. I mean, really, it kind of really pertains to really and how we project ourselves, either as an athlete or a professional athlete. And I feel like that kind of, it's more seen on a team-based sport versus golf that I play. It's kind of more singular. But I feel like, if there's always something bad or, some abusement of their power in a sense, then I feel like it's always going to be viewed differently and, it's always going to be judged. But I feel like, definitely they should be careful on what they do, but they should have the freedom to do as they wish for their personal reasons.
Elijah.
I want to go away from sports because I've been talking about it, and I'm looking forward for some new movies to come out. Honestly, like Guardians of the Galaxy, and
me too.
and I also want to talk about hobbies. My favorite hobby is playing video games and working out. I know David's favorite hobby is golf. What's you guys' favorite hobby?
That's a sport.
Well, since we're talking about hobbies on a connotative note, being a cheerleader, there's also that leader aspect to the sport. And I just like to say that leadership is also my sport. Even though I don't get recognized with trophies or medals and awards, I still get recognized with the followers and the change that I'm able to bring and develop in my community. And that's the biggest reward I can receive. So,
Fantastic.
Well, you guys are hearing a lot about me that most people don't. One of my hobbies is actually model railroading. I have a little diorama in my basement, and kind of play around with that.
You make railroads?
Yeah.
Oh man, tell me a little bit more about this. How big is it?
It's like maybe 7 feet by 3 feet. There's like a little mountain, and the trains are really, really small, but it's kind of fun to create these little tiny trees and buildings and just build like your own little city.
very unique.
Elijah, what are you playing right now?
What do you mean, video games? Dang.
Madden?
Well, yeah, I play a lot of Madden. Also, I like to play a lot of Call of Duty, waiting for the new Call of Duty. It's called World War II or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Should be called Battlefield 1 because it's basically the exact same thing. But right now I'm playing Grand Theft Auto, I gotta...
Sorry, Mom.
Okay, yeah, and then I just play a lot of sports game,
Okay. Giselle, what kind of leadership do you do? Like, what are some of the things you are involved in your community?
So I'm very passionate about social justice change in my community. Every year I develop a team in my school where we focus on different projects. So the first year that I started this, our focus was to develop diplomatic leaders that transcends borders. So we took students in North Korea and students in the U.S. to become pen pals with each other, to practice their diplomatic skills with each other. And then the second year, we saw a lot of tension between Denver law enforcement and youth with the national situation that was occurring with Michael Brown and law enforcement. So we try to develop positive therapeutical sessions among each other. And then this year, walking around the hallways of our school, we saw that a lot of the leadership positions were taken by white students, which didn't necessarily represent the student population that attended our school.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission was to develop and bring an equity playing field among leadership in our school.
That is fantastic. It's nice to hear that that's
was
in a...
amazing.
Yeah, it's great. So I'd like to thank David, Elijah, Giselle, and Andrew for joining me today. This has been Mile High Discussions. I am Michael, and we'll see you next week.